Hello, sixth graders. Our next lesson here is on dividing decimals. So across the top of your paper, make sure you have the title here, Dividing Decimals. And our learning target, I can divide decimals. First, we're going to start here with a long division example. Hopefully this is review for you. So we're taking 648 and we are dividing it by 12. So we start with our division bracket. The first number is the number that we are trying to divide or split up, so that's going to go inside the division bracket. And our second number, that's what we are dividing by, so that goes on the outside. Now, we are trying to figure out how many times does 12 fit into 648. So first we say, can 12 go into 6? It can't, so I put a 0 up above. Right? If I have 6 cookies, I can't divide them between 12 people. There's not enough for everybody to get at least one. So now we look at it as 64. How many times does 12 go into 64 without going over? It goes in there 5 times. 5 times 12 is 60. So I write that down below, so I multiplied. Now I'm going to subtract 64 minus 60, which is 4. Bring down the next number. Now we see how many times does 12 go into 48. 12 goes into 48 without going over 4 times. Now we're going to multiply 4 times 12, which is 48. So I write that down below. Subtract 48 minus 48 is 0. So I have nothing else to bring down, nothing left over. So my answer is what I have up here. So our final answer, 54. Okay, so now looking at these examples here, dividing decimals. So pause and write down what you see in the box here when we have a decimal and we are dividing it by a whole number. So the first step, place a decimal point directly above the decimal under the division bracket. And step 2, divide to find the quotient. Remember, quotient is the answer to a division problem. So pause, make sure you have those steps written down, and then we'll go through our examples. 96 hundredths divided by 4. So again, start with my division bracket. The first number goes inside the bracket. Second number goes on the outside. So we are trying to figure out how many times does 4 go into 96 hundredths. So when we're dividing with decimals, this outside number always has to be a whole number, which in this case it already is. So we just follow these steps. Carry the decimal point straight up above, like it's on an elevator. Now divide like normal. So 4 can't go into 0, so I fill in with a 0 as a placeholder. Now how many times can 4 go into 9 without going over? It goes in there twice. Multiply. 2 times 4 is 8. Now we're going to subtract. 9 minus 8, which is 1. Drop down the next number, which now we have 16. So how many times does 4 go into 16 without going over? It goes in 4 times. Multiply 4 times 4, which is 16. Subtract 16 minus 16 is 0. Nothing else to bring down. We have 0 here, so our final answer would be what's on the top here, 24 hundredths. If you're feeling comfortable, pause and try this one on your own. 1 and 26 hundredths divided by 5. So again, start with my division bracket. The first number goes underneath the bracket. Second number goes on the outside. Carry the decimal straight up above and then divide like normal. Can 5 go into 1? No, so I fill in with a 0. Now we think of it as 12. How many times does 5? We're just ignoring that decimal point in there. So how many times does 5 go into 12 without going over? It goes in there twice. Multiply 2 times 5, which is 10. Subtract 12 minus 10, which is 2. Drop down the next number. So now how many times does 5 go into 26? Goes into 26 without 5 times without going over. Multiply 5 times 5, which is 25. Subtract 26 minus 25 is 1. Now we don't have anything else to bring over, but we have a 1 here, so we don't just stop and say remainder 1. What we do instead is we add another 0 below the division bracket. Notice we're below it. Now we can bring that number down. So now we see how many times can 5 go into 10. Well, it goes in there twice without going over. So multiply, 2 times 5 is 10, subtract, 10 minus 10 is 0. Now we have 0 down here, nothing else to bring down, so our final answer would be 252 thousandths. Now we have when we are dividing a decimal by a decimal, so write down everything that's in this box, pause, write it down, and then resume. Step 1, move both decimal points to the right the same number of places to make the outside number whole. Step 2, place the decimal directly above the decimal in the box. And step 3, divide to find the quotient. So let's do a couple examples to see what does that exactly mean. So again, make your division bracket. First number goes inside, 12 and 6/10, and the 3/10 goes on the outside. So this outside number here, we need it to be a whole number, so we need to get rid of that decimal point. In order to do that, we are going to move the decimal 1 spot to the right. Now, whatever we do on the outside, we also have to do it on the inside number as well in order to keep our problem balanced. So since I moved 1 spot on the 3/10, I'm going to move 1 spot here. So my decimal is now here at the end of the number. And from there, we carry it up above. Be very careful about your place, where your numbers are and their place values. Otherwise, your answer will be all messed up. Now that we have the decimal in the right spot, we can divide like normal. So again, this outside number, we're just going to think of it as 3. And our number under the bracket now is 126. So we're ignoring all the decimals. Can 3 go into 1? No, so I put a 0 up above. Can 3 go into 12? Yes, it will go in there 4 times. Multiply, 4 times 3 is 12. Subtract 12 minus 12, which is 0. Drop down the next number, which is 6. Now, how many times can 3 go into 6? It goes in there twice. Multiply, 2 times 3 is 6. Subtract, 6 minus 6 is 0. Bring down the next number. There is nothing else to bring down. We have 0 at the bottom, so we are done. Remember, our answer at the top here is our final answer. So 42. So 3/10 goes into 12 and 6/10 42 times. Next one, we already have the division bracket done, so I'm not going to worry about rewriting it at all. Just erase what's here so I have more space to work. So we are seeing how many times does 1 and 25 hundredths fit into 2 and 875 thousandths. So again, this outside number, we need it to be a whole number, so we need to move that decimal place. So we're going to move 2 spots to the right. So now we'll think of it as 125. Now the number under the bracket, same thing, we have to move the same amount of spots. So we move 2 spots, and then we carry the decimal straight up above from there. Now we can ignore all decimal points. We're working with a little bit bigger numbers now, so I'm going to have to do some multiplication off to the side probably. So how many times can 125 fit into 2? It can't, so I put a 0 there. Can it fit into 28? No, so I'm going to put another 0 there, being very careful of my where my numbers are going, my place values. Now we have to figure out how many times can 125 fit into 287. Well, I know 125 and another 125, if I add those together, would make 250. And if I try to do more than that, it'll go over. So it fits in there twice. Now we multiply 2 times 125, which is 250. Subtract 7 minus 0, 8 minus 5, 2 minus 2. Bring down the next number. So now how many times does 125 fit into 375? Well, 2 times was 250, so if I add another 125, that will be 375. So it fits in there exactly 3 times. 3 times 125 is 375. Oops, don't add them together. We're going to subtract them. Okay, subtract those 2 numbers, which we get 0. Nothing else to bring down, so my final answer for this one, 2 and 3/10. Okay, another one to try here, and again, we already have it in the division bracket, so I'm not going to worry about writing it, but we are taking, the original problem would have looked something like this. Okay. 12 divided by 1 and 5/10. So how many times does 1 and 5/10 fit into 12? Outside number, we need to make it whole, so I'm going to move the decimal spot one place to the right. Whatever I do to the outside, I have to do to the inside, but there is no decimal. So what I'll do is I add a decimal to the end of my number, and then from there, I move one spot to the right. Fill in this empty spot with a 0, and then carry that decimal point directly up above. So now we have kind of how many times does 15 go into 120? It can't go into 1, so I put a 0 there. 15 does not fit into 12, so I fill in with a 0. Now I got to figure out how many times does 15 go into 120. I don't know off the top of my head. I could use my multiplication chart. Okay, follow the 15s down and see, or we could do some multiplication off to the side. I'm going to guess that it is somewhere, I know 10 times would be 150. So let's try 7 times, a little less than that. So 7 times 5 is 35. We just do this off to the side here. 7 times 1 is 7, plus 3 is 10, so that's not enough. If I add another 15, that would be 120. So that was 7, and this one is another one. So it goes in there 8 times, which if we had done 15 times 8, it would equal 120. Subtract 120 minus 120 is 0. Nothing else to bring down, so our final answer would be 8. So you still have to move the decimal place, and then you have to move it on the inside number as well, even if there isn't already a decimal there. You just fill in with zeros. Please make sure that you have this written down in your notebook. This is a very important takeaway from this video. If you are dividing by a number that is greater than 1, your answer is going to end up being smaller. So what I mean by this would be something like 20 divided by 2 and 5/10. Your answer is going to be smaller than what you started with. If you are dividing by something that is less than 1, you're going to end up with a bigger number. So again, if you were to take 20, but now you are dividing it by 5/10, your answer will be bigger than the 20 that you started with, because you are taking 20 and you are splitting it into very small pieces. Okay, like if you have 20 cookies and you split all of them in half, you will now have 40 pieces of cookie. You have more than you start with. If you have 20 cookies and you are splitting them between, each person gets 2.5, right, you're going to end up with a smaller number. So very important, make sure you have that written down. Okay, that's all for dividing decimals. Please rewatch the video if you need to, and check out any of the other teachers' videos. And then please make sure that your notes are in class tomorrow. So put your notebook in your backpack right now.